Amazing twist, shy intern discovers she's at VIP table, unwittingly critiquing the CEO. Emily felt small as she stood frozen at the entrance of the dimly lit banquet hall, her heart racing as the hum of laughter and clinking glasses filled her ears. She had meant to grab a quick drink and retreat to the confines of her cubicle, but an accidental misstep had led her here, surrounded by suits and the bright chandeliers of high-level executives. The stark contrast between her modest upbringing and the polished demeanor of the guests only amplified her awkwardness. All she wanted was to blend into the background. Instead, she felt like an imposter. As she fidgeted with the hem of her blouse, the words of her parents echoed in her mind: work hard, stay humble, honor the sacrifices they made for her. But what good was that advice if she felt like an outsider? When the conversation around her shifted toward an upcoming ad campaign, a faint, gnawing unease bubbled within her. Did they really think they were going to resonate with anyone? An unexpected wave of boldness surged through her veins, spurred on by the chatter that felt disingenuous. Without reservation, Emily opened her mouth, her nerves momentarily drowned out by an urge to speak her mind. It sounds convoluted. Aiming to appeal to a generation that craves authenticity yet drowning in an overproduced narrative. Doesn't that feel a bit off? Silence fell. Then, laughter erupted, swirling around her like a whirlpool. Her cheeks burned as she hastily realized she had just critiqued the project of Richard Lawson, the agency's CEO, a man whose mere presence commanded power and respect. Panic wrapped around her throat as he turned toward her, his sharp eyes glinting with surprise. The room recoiled momentarily, but Richard's intrigued smile loosened the tension. Interesting perspective, he mused, clearly taken aback. Emily's pulse raced, caught between anxiety and a strange sense of validation. Everyone else seemed to lean in, drawn to her, and in that moment, she realized Richard was listening. Yet, as the laughter subsided, a shadow of fear threatened to envelop her. What if her honesty cost her the internship? Her family back home depended on her income to keep their bills at bay. An overwhelming sense of duty gripped her, erasing any traces of her newfound confidence. She could almost hear her mother's worried tone, urging her to tread carefully with every move she made. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The evening slipped into an awkward lull, leaving Emily anxiously contemplating her next steps as anxiety washed over her like a tide. Would Richard dismiss her as just another naive intern, or would he see the value in her authenticity? Suddenly, he leaned forward, his gaze steady. Emily, I'd like to hear more of your thoughts. Why don't we discuss this further? Maybe your insight could fit in the next meeting. The invitation sent jolts of fear and excitement through her veins, but the wind left her sails as quickly as it had come. What if they realized she didn't belong? She felt trapped between honoring her family's sacrifices and the anxiety of stepping fully into her ambition. Just breathing felt heavy, her resolve wavering like a flickering flame in a storm. Emily stood there, doubt bubbling anew within her. She wanted to prove herself in this fast-paced world, but every question that popped into her mind leaned dangerously close to the values she'd been raised on. Could she truly align her family's expectations with her own dreams? The thick air around her seemed to wrap her in despair as she took a step forward, heart thumping with uncertainty, edging closer to answering a question that felt insurmountable. The moment hung in the air, each second stretching into a lifetime of uncertainty, as Emily searched for the right words. It felt surreal to be at the center of attention, a round table of seasoned professionals hung on the edge of her voice like she had suddenly become an authority. Did they genuinely want to hear her opinion? She felt the weight of judgment in the air, every gaze both supportive and scrutinizing. Taking a deep breath, she willed herself to shift from fear to clarity. The uncertainty of the past few seconds crystallized into a resolve. Emily's mind raced through the concepts she had studied and the debates she had engaged in during her classes. She felt a small fire ignite within her, a smoldering desire to contribute to a conversation that could potentially influence lives rather than merely critique superficial trends. Reflecting on the ad campaign's themes, she said, "I think it's important to connect with people authentically. If the messaging feels staged, that could backfire, especially at a time when transparency is valuable." Flashes of self-doubt flickered in her mind, but she pressed on. Maybe the campaign could include testimonials or user-generated content. That keeps it real, allows for genuine connections. Richard leaned back, nodding, his expression morphing into contemplation. Others chimed in, building on her ideas with their own experiences, excitedly discussing strategies and approaches she hadn't considered before. It was intoxicating to see her thoughts evolve through collaboration, yet a nagging voice still whispered in the back of her mind who was she to influence them. As the conversation flowed, Emily took mental notes of the dynamics at play. She witnessed how ideas morphed, how laughter broke tension, and how people seemed to genuinely appreciate being brought back to a core truth. It was energizing. With each exchange, her apprehension simmered down, replaced gradually by a growing sense of competence and capability. Then, almost without warning, a shadow fell over her moment of clarity. A colleague, Parker, a well-regarded account manager, smirked. "Interesting angle, Emily," he remarked, his tone laced with condescension. "But this is a high-stakes campaign, don't you think you're a bit out of your depth?" Heat rushed to her cheeks, but in the midst of the barb, she sensed a crucial lesson forming. This was a classic tactic designed to belittle her contributions and undermine her growing confidence. Was this how the professional world thrived? Were such dismissals the norm for women aspiring to voice their insights? Emily felt her chest tighten, teetering on the brink of retreating back into her shell, yet she resisted the urge. The experience of being listened to, of sharing thoughts that mattered, anchored her. "On the contrary, Parker," she replied, striving for poise, "I think fresh perspectives can bring value we may overlook from within our usual frameworks." Silence enveloped the table momentarily, the boldness of her response both unexpected and liberating. She felt that flame inside her flare up again, pushing down her instinct to apologize or backtrack. Richard clapped his hands together, breaking the tension. "That's the spirit we need in this room. Let us take that advice and build on it." With a sense of closure beginning to overtake the meeting, Emily realized her earlier fears of being an imposter or disappointing her family began to melt away. She had done more than critique, she had contributed, and in a way that commanded respect. However, amid the palpable thrill of her triumph, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would tip the balance of her internship's future. Who would take her seriously after this? How would she navigate the ongoing challenges posed by people like Parker? As she collected her thoughts, the weight of possibility surged once more. Could this be the turning point she had yearned for, not just in her career but in her own self-worth? The excitement churned alongside the uncertainty, framing a question that lingered in her mind: could she continue to assert herself in an environment that could very well push back? Emily stepped out into the night, the high stakes of the banquet still echoing in her ears. Each footfall on the pavement felt like a step toward a new self, but clarity of her path still eluded her. Just as determination solidified into a resolve, the pull of ambiguity reminded her that the real challenges lay ahead. She gazed into the distance, her mind wrestling with the notion that her upcoming meeting with Richard could either solidify her place in this world or shatter the progress she had made. The rush of adrenaline coursing through her hinted at the next hurdle waiting just around the corner. Would she embrace what lay ahead or shrink back into safety? In that moment, she knew she was standing at the edge of a choice that could define her journey forward. Emily woke the next morning with excitement mixed with anxiety, her mind racing back to the prior night's meeting. The clarity she had found and the confidence she had unexpectedly summoned felt fleeting in the light of day. Would she carry that momentum into her meeting with Richard, or would she falter, slipping back into her old notions of self-doubt? As she prepared, she practiced speaking in front of the mirror, imagining herself as a competent professional rather than the uncertain intern she often saw reflected back at her. She chose her outfit carefully, wanting to project confidence. A well-fitted blazer and tailored blouse gave her a sense of readiness. She made sure to carry her portfolio with notes, aiming to focus on content over nerves. This meeting was her chance to establish herself. Upon arriving at the office, the atmosphere was alive with energy. Everyone seemed busy and purposeful. Emily found it oddly intimidating, navigating the bustling common areas filled with senior executives, designers, and marketers. Each step felt like a test of her resolve, and she grappled with the urge to blend into the background. When she entered the conference room, Richard had already gathered the rest of the team. He greeted her with a warm smile. "Emily. Good to see you. Ready for round 2? The reassurance in his tone subtly bolstered her self-belief. As the meeting commenced, Richard laid out the expectations. "We're aiming for something innovative with this campaign. Ideas can come from anywhere, and I encourage everyone to be bold." His words hung in the air, stirring a mix of excitement and trepidation within her. With the stage set, she reminded herself of her initial insights from the previous day. If she could stand up to Parker then, surely she could face a room filled with even more intimidating figures now. Richard shifted focus to her, asking, "Emily, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what we discussed yesterday." The moment felt monumental, her heart almost racing out of control. She locked eyes with him, a silent affirmation that she was ready to share. "Thank you, Richard. I believe we need to gauge authentic customer sentiments, not just follow trends. It's about narratives that resonate, not just flashy graphics." The words rolled off her tongue with more clarity than she expected. She could feel her previous self beginning to merge with this evolving version, fueled by a need to be heard. As she elaborated, sharing specific examples of brands that had successfully engaged audiences through authenticity, she noticed the intrigued expressions around her. The sparks of inspiration ignited color in the conference room. It felt exhilarating to bring ideas to life, and with each moment, her confidence blossomed further. Yet it wasn't long before Parker struck again, a familiar sardonic expression on his face. "It sounds nice, Emily, but have you thought about operational feasibility? Not all brands can afford that level of customization." It was a calculated thrust designed to undermine her enthusiasm. But now, armed with experience, she faced him without hesitation. "I understand your concern, Parker, but isn't it worth pushing for solutions that elevate our brand, rather than sticking to conventional frameworks? We could explore partnerships or scalable methods to make it work." For the first time, she noticed a glimmer of surprise in the eyes of her colleagues, even among some of the veterans. Richard nodded appreciatively, "That's a constructive response, Emily. Let us explore how we'll make that feasible." As the meeting progressed, more ideas flowed freely. Analysis and improvisation became intertwined, and Emily felt herself contributing to nuanced conversations as she navigated what had initially seemed an insurmountable environment. Confidence expanded within her, now taking up space where uncertainty once dominated. However, a deeper awareness began simmering within her. She sensed the stakes were shifting, the discussion was growing, but so were the pressures she felt from her colleagues and her own standards. It became clear that navigating her journey would not just hinge on asserting herself, she would need to balance the pushback she might face from the likes of Parker, who wouldn't easily relinquish the status quo. Just as the meeting was wrapping up, Richard's next words sent a wave of anticipation through Emily. "I think we're on the right track. We should prepare for a presentation next week to showcase our findings." The task loomed large and her heart raced, but it was a challenge she realized she desperately wanted to conquer. Emily left the room with her mind racing, realizing the stakes were higher than she imagined. The taste of potential success mixed with the fear of failure hung heavy in the air. What tools had she yet to unlock, and what steps would she need to take to solidify her standing in this competitive world? As she took a deep breath, the reality of the upcoming presentation hit her. The risks, the expectations, and the undeniable desire to prove herself loomed before her. Would she find the courage to confront that very vulnerability she sought to conquer, or would the anxiety of potential failure hold her back? With those thoughts racing in her mind, she turned to her next task, preparing for what felt like the toughest battle yet, one that could either elevate her or challenge her identity in the professional realm anew. The days leading up to the presentation blurred together. Emily pored over her notes, analyzing every aspect of the project with meticulous attention. Each time she thought she was prepared, a new layer of insecurity pushed to the surface. What if her ideas didn't resonate? What if she stumbled over her words in front of Richard and her peers? Each hypothetical scenario replayed in her mind like an unwanted soundtrack, amplifying the anticipation into a relentless crescendo. In the quieter moments, when the office noise hushed or the common areas emptied, her internal dialogue shifted from anxiety to strategy. She began to visualize the story she wanted to tell, a narrative that encompassed not only data points and case studies but the passion behind her beliefs. She wanted to show them that marketing could be more than sales, it could be about forging genuine connections. The images of customers engaging deeply with campaigns filled her mind, igniting a spark of determination. But every time she crafted an outline, doubt snaked back, whispering that her perspective was too idealistic. Is this really what the top executives wanted to hear? As the self-doubt whispered, she fought back, reminding herself that her insights had value and could challenge the complacency Parker often represented. Each time, she would return to the mirror, reciting affirmations that began to feel more like a mantra: I am capable. I have a voice. I am worthy of this opportunity. On the morning of the presentation, Emily arrived early, nerves vibrating in her stomach. The whiteboard loomed large, eager to be filled with her ideas. She had rehearsed every arc of her narrative. As she stood before the board, marker in hand, she traced the lines of her thoughts, crafting a visual map that broke down walls she had subconsciously built. Her colleagues filed in, some exchanging words, others glancing at their phones. Richard entered last, a reassuring smile on his face. "Let us give it our all today," he urged, and suddenly, every ounce of encouragement surged through her. When it was her turn to present, Emily felt the heavy weight of the conference room's expectation. She took a deep breath, her palms tingling with both adrenaline and vulnerability. With each slide, she spoke with clarity, her passion weaving through data, historical context, and the human elements that could turn a simple marketing campaign into a movement. Just as she reached a critical moment, the part where she connected her insights to a specific branding success story, the familiar shadow of Parker cast over her once more. "You present a nice fantasy, Emily," he said, leaning back in his chair with that same sardonic chuckle. "But when will we see actual metrics? Without numbers, you're just selling dreams." For a split second, her heart plummeted, the sting of his words echoing in the room. But instead of retreating, she held her ground. "Parker, metrics are essential, but they're rooted in the story we tell. It's out the emotional drive that leads to those numbers. Without understanding the why behind consumer behavior, those numbers lack context." Richard perked up, nodding in agreement as others glanced between the two. Emily felt the energy shift. The moment felt transformative not only for her but within the entire team. She kept her gaze steady, empowering herself further with the realization that she could hold space in the conversation. As the presentation concluded, applause greeted her. A wave of relief washed over her, the feeling was unprecedented. The discussion that followed felt vibrant, not a mere recitation of ideas but a genuine exchange. Colleagues began chipping in, arguing and amplifying the sections they felt resonated with them, as if Emily had catalyzed a spark. When the meeting wrapped up, Richard clapped her on the shoulder. "Great job today, Emily. You not only held your ground but inspired us all. We'll incorporate your recommendations." Yet, even in her success, a nagging thought remained: Parker's skepticism wasn't thoroughly quashed. As she navigated the hallway back to her desk, a pit formed in her stomach. What if his doubts resurfaced with more vigor? Would she have the tools to dismantle them again? The storm of accomplishment and anxiety clashed within her. She ventured back to her desk, the adrenaline still surging, but also shadowed by the unpredictable potential of Parker's criticism. Emily wondered if she could keep nurturing this newfound confidence going forward. How would she face the inevitable challenges that lay ahead in this competitive environment? Outside her office, she noticed a glimmer of sunlight breaking through the cloud cover, illuminating a path ahead. Yet, just as she committed to embracing her journey, Richard approached her with an unexpected proposition. "Emily, I think we should get some insights from a few executives outside our department," he remarked, pausing for effect. "Would you be up for leading the next round of discussions with the C-suite?" The question hung in the air like a double-edged sword. Would she have the nerve to deepen her commitment, facing the very individuals who could alter her professional trajectory? The possibilities delighted and terrified her in equal measure as she grappled with the weight of his words. She took a deep breath, ready to confront both excitement and fear, neither fully knowing what that new journey would entail nor how it might redefine her sense of purpose. Emily felt a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins, equal parts excitement and dread as Richard's proposal settled into her consciousness. The jubilant mood from her presentation began to fade, replaced by the stark reality of what lay ahead. Engaging with the C-suite was a monumental opportunity, but could she truly rise to the occasion? Sitting at her desk, the luminous light outside seemed to mock her new doubts, taunting her confidence inches away from her grasp. Since childhood, she had yearned for validation, but this was different. This was an unfamiliar arena, filled with individuals who could shape her future. The stakes had just escalated. She pondered her previous encounter with Parker. His sardonic remarks echoed, drawing her attention back to the lingering criticism she had yet to overcome. Would she be able to defend her ideas in front of senior executives? They would expect hard data, traditional metrics, and polished presentations. Could she continue to advocate for this emotional narrative she believed so strongly in? Her mind worked through potential strategies as she opened her notebook, spilling ink over fresh pages like a canvas waiting for a masterpiece. She meticulously noted down key points that had resonated with her colleagues before: the emotional drivers, compelling stories behind successful campaigns, and the distinct promise to connect with consumers. But each time she jotted a point down, the abyss of Parker's skepticism whispered, "Metrics, Emily, metrics." The challenge ahead wasn't just about numbers, it was about changing the narrative around marketing within the company. Emily was building a bridge, but would this be enough to safely cross the divide? She had a choice: to fall back on traditional methods or forge ahead with her own approach. The very thought of yielding felt like betraying the progress she had made, but the risks of confrontation loomed large. As she delved deeper into research, drawing insights from successful marketers who had prioritized emotional connection over hard metrics, she stumbled upon various articles detailing case studies that seemed to represent her vision. Her pulse quickened as ideas bounced around her mind, the trepidation dissolving in the face of newfound inspiration. Perhaps if she could articulate her perspective through successful examples, it could resonate with the C-suite far better than abstract numbers alone. Determined, she crafted a structure for her next presentation, intertwining the data that was critical for validation with the heart of storytelling. Her outline transformed from mere notes into a tapestry, each thread representing different aspects of her vision. What if she could bridge the best of both worlds, the quantitative and the qualitative? Days passed in a whirlwind of preparation: mock presentations with Richard's feedback, late nights cross-referencing case studies, and deep introspection as she worked to reinforce her confidence. Each achievement spurred her forward but also kept the shadow of doubt close at hand. The appointed day arrived, and she walked into the conference room, a mixture of hope and anxiety swelling in her chest. The air felt heavier, charged with anticipation. She stared at the executive faces before her, a blend of curiosity and skepticism. Suddenly, all the hard work and strategic planning felt like a paper boat on a turbulent sea. Could her soft-spoken nature command the room? As she began her presentation, Emily felt a shift. Her passion ignited the atmosphere. She spoke with authenticity, intertwining metrics to highlight the societal impact of their recent campaign alongside the emotional stories that mattered. She felt free, like the weight of expectations evaporated with each point she made. And then came Parker's unwavering critique, aimed like an arrow at her core. Again with the emotional fluff, Emily. You've got to be kidding me. What about the numbers? The room grew tense, air thickening as the notorious observer narrowed his gaze on her once more. The moment teetered on a precipice. This time, instead of faltering, she stood taller, drawing from the collective heartbeat of her preparation. Parker, the numbers support our approach because they reflect real connections. Can we define success solely by data when the goal is to engage? How can we expect loyalty from consumers when we reduce them to mere figures? The challenge unveiled a raw nerve within her. She was confronting not only Parker but the ingrained societal ties between traditional metrics and innovative approaches. Would her voice plant a seed of change or merely be drowned by thunderous doubt? As the eyes of her peers bore into her, she felt a rush of conviction sparking within. Her heart raced, and for the first time, she was ready to confront the very force that had long held her back, the fear of standing alone. Let us reimagine our metrics to reflect not just sales, but authentic experiences, she pushed, her voice resolute. A connection will cultivate loyalty that transcends growth. It's the new currency. The silence hung thick as she waited for a response, aware that her fate rested on this pivotal moment. How would they react, and what would Parker's next move entail? Emily yearned for affirmation but trembled at the acknowledgement of what she had just set in motion. Would this serve as the turning point she craved, or would it plunge her deeper into the realm of skepticism? The journey was far from over. Emily's heart raced in the silent aftermath of her proclamation. The expectant faces around the conference table were a mix of astonishment and intrigue. It was a precarious moment that felt both exhilarating and unnervingly vulnerable. She was standing at the intersection of her aspirations and her fears. The reality of having taken a bold stance had settled heavily upon her. Interesting perspective, Emily. Richard finally broke the silence, his tone a careful blend of curiosity and caution. What metrics would you suggest we use to gauge these authentic experiences you speak of? This was the moment she had been waiting for a chance to elaborate, but immediately her confidence wavered. How could she articulate a comprehensive plan amidst the simmering tension produced by Parker's skepticism? Would Richard's question be a stepping stone or a setback? Oh, that's a great question, she stumbled slightly, taking a deep breath. We could look at customer satisfaction scores, how people feel about their experiences, and track brand loyalty by measuring repeat purchases alongside qualitative feedback. The words turned clunky as they left her mouth, but something deeper stirred. She shifted her gaze towards the C-suite, grounding herself in their openness rather than their authority. Exact numbers matter, so we could combine this with traditional metrics, she added, surprising herself. A flash of clarity dawned. She was blending her ideologies, crafting a new narrative instead of being pulled back into the past. Parker, however, wasn't ready to relent. So, you want us to shift our entire strategy towards feelings? What about the bottom line? He leaned forward, eyes fixed on her, a wolf waiting for a wrong move. Emily felt a defiance ignite within her. Data on its own doesn't capture the full picture, she responded, her voice steady. We need to understand our consumers' emotional journeys, too. There are companies out there that have achieved significant growth by fostering genuine connections. Why can't we learn from them? She could see some heads nodding at the mention of other companies. Intrigued expressions pointed toward tentative approval bubbling beneath the surface. Giving life to these ideas through examples from well-known brands made her confidence grow. She transformed from mere participant to an advocate of her vision. As the presentation unfolded, the initial anxiety waned, replaced by a profound sense of purpose. Ideas flowed, and she discussed frameworks for emotional targeting strategies that could genuinely resonate with the market. As she spoke, she felt the C-suite's collective shift. The initial skepticism was melting away. However, doubt still gnawed at her. She hadn't fully faced Parker's continued rebuttals, and his piercing, critical attention felt like a sword dangling ominously above her. Was she simply staving off a more significant blow to her credibility? Or had she truly stepped onto the road to redefine the company culture? Interesting concepts, Emily, said one of the executives, Linda, a senior content strategist, nodding with thoughtful approval. But how do we change internal perceptions about the data crunching mindset? Emily paused, allowing the weight of the question to settle, knowing that internal culture shifts could take immense time and tenacity. We'll need to implement training sessions, aligning our marketing efforts with storytelling principles while anchoring those narratives to solid data points, she suggested, her mind racing through potential strategies. Her instinct was clear: this would require systemic support, not just from the leadership but from the entire team. Transformation, she realized, was not a singular battle. It needed to be a collective mission to pivot toward a new era in marketing. Minutes passed as discussions evolved, building on her foundation. An encouraging rhythm sparked among the executives a realization that perhaps this merger of emotion and data could frame their next innovative leap. Yet as the session began to wind down, Emily still felt an undercurrent of unresolved tension. Parker's harsh critique loomed as a specter, threatening to undermine her hard-won victories. As the meeting adjourned, his piercing gaze followed her, carrying an aura of impending confrontation. After everyone left the room except for Richard, Emily gathered her thoughts, gathering the remnants of her courage. "Emily, you did beautifully," he said, a warm smile easing away the tension. But before she could bask in the encouragement fully, he continued, "But I know Parker will not let this go that easily. He will come for you next." A chill crawled down her spine. Confrontation loomed ahead once more, a reminder that her progress was still fraught with challenges. "Are you ready for that?" Richard's question hung in the atmosphere, a critical crossroads paving the way to further entrenchment or empowerment in her journey. Her heart palpitated, tearing between anxiety and determination. The time had come to face the very embodiment of her hesitation, and she would need to cultivate every ounce of resolve to uncover the hidden truths within her abilities. Emily took a steadying breath, feeling the weight of her next move heavily pressing down. Would she stand her ground or fold under pressure? The resolution felt tantalizingly close, yet out of reach, casting a long shadow over her path forward. Emily's mind buzzed with conflicting thoughts as she left the conference room. Each step echoed her internal struggle, a dissonance between the breakthrough she had just achieved and the looming confrontation she anticipated from Parker. How had she managed to shake the skepticism in the room? Yet, his skeptical presence was a weight she could not ignore. She took a detour to the balcony, needing to breathe and collect herself. The city sprawled out before her, a vast tapestry of competitive fervor, much like the meeting had felt. Taking in the view, she allowed herself a brief moment of clarity. This was her chance to conquer the doubts that had stalled her professional trajectory for so long. But uncertainty gnawed at her. What if she wasn't ready to face Parker? He had a way of cutting through arguments like a knife, and every sharp word made echoes in her psyche, reminding her of the criticism she had faced in the past. She shuffled through the details. They urged her to reconsider her position. Perhaps she had overstepped by suggesting a rewrite of their entire marketing approach. "Focus on the story," she muttered to herself. The narrative must resonate. The mantra wasn't enough to quell her insecurities. In her mind, Parker's voice replayed, filled with derision, "What about the bottom line?" It was impossible to forget, especially when bottom lines mattered to everyone in the room. She had to shift that narrative back in her favor, but how? After a moment, determination kicked in. If she wanted their trust, she would have to confront Parker head-on, turning the impending meeting into an opportunity rather than a threat. The prospect of facing him with newfound strategies clawed at her, but it ignited a fire deep within. She envisioned herself articulating her strategies, a blend of emotional depths and analytical rigor, painting a picture none could easily dismiss. Returning to her desk, Emily prepared for the battle ahead. She whipped out her notes, combing through every detail she'd brainstormed to ensure that the emotional narrative was both quantifiable and compelling. It was a fusion of the analytical and the imaginative, a realm she momentarily hesitated to navigate, but conviction propelled her forward. Then the moment arrived. Parker walked into the office, exuding that familiar air of authority, as employees paused in their tasks, casting tacit glances toward them. She felt the tension coil in her stomach but approached him nonetheless. "Emily, I hope you're not planning to repeat your presentation," he stated, tone dripping with condescension. It failed to convince. His words tightened the lump in her throat, but Emily steadied herself, raising her chin. "Actually, I've re-evaluated our metrics under consideration. I believe we can bridge emotional intelligence with our data-driven strategies to create a deeper connection with our consumers." Parker raised an eyebrow, amusement flickering in his gaze. "And what exactly does that look like? Are you prepared to defend your position?" She looked him directly in the eye, grasping the opportunity. "We utilize qualitative feedback alongside customer satisfaction scores and repeat purchase rates. By tracking emotional responses, we gain comprehensive insights that traditional metrics overlook." His skepticism had transformed into curiosity, a subtle shift that energized her. "But there's no established precedent, Emily," he pressed. "How do you justify this before the board?" "I'll show them a case study," she declared, hand tightening on her notes. "I've identified several companies that thrived with these approaches. Their success and growth challenged the old paradigms." With every sentence, she felt herself morph into someone increasingly capable and brave. Perhaps this wasn't just about addressing Parker but asserting her rightful place in the conversation. As Parker contemplated her argument, Emily sensed she was gaining ground. But deep inside, an unsettling thought lingered. What if the board rejected her? What if the very foundation she was trying to build crumbled? "Prepare yourself, Emily," he finally replied, his voice less dismissive now. "The questions will be harder than the last meeting." She nodded, fully aware the stakes were rising. Not only her ideas but her credibility hinged on this outcome. Emily returned to her desk, her heart thumping. She had to reinforce her defenses and anticipate every conceivable query from Parker and the board members. This confrontation wasn't merely a hurdle but a definitive chapter in her journey. What if the questions pushed her beyond her limits? Had she truly uncovered reservoirs of resilience within herself? The outcome felt both tantalizingly close yet perilously fraught with risk. Exhaling deeply, Emily resolved then and there that she would not just confront Parker. She would seize the moment to stake her claim in the company. The following meeting would not simply test her ideas but serve as a crucible to solidify her identity as a professional. The ultimate question loomed: would she emerge triumphant, or would the weight of expectation crush her? Her next move was clear. Emily would have to prepare to confront the very heart of her fears, but would she be able to withstand what lay ahead, or would the ground beneath her feet shift once again? Preparation consumed Emily as she sat in front of her computer, the weights of expectation pressing on her shoulders like an anvil. She had spent the evening revisiting case studies, refining her metrics, and concocting possible counterarguments in an attempt to anticipate Parker's challenge. The more she delved into her research, the clearer it became that her innovative approach could shine if she didn't buckle under the gravity of skepticism. Her desk, strewn with papers and highlighted notes, mirrored her mind cluttered, yet alive with potential. Every statistic, every narrative she pieced together began to construct a sense of agency she longed to embody. If she were going to challenge the status quo, she would have to do so with both competence and confidence. As the clock ticked towards the meeting, her palms dampened, but a fierce sense of purpose pushed her to lean into the discomfort. This was not merely about presenting data, it was about telling her story and solidifying her stake in the company's identity. The conference room felt stifling as Emily walked in, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Employees were already seated, whispering among themselves, but their hushed excitement did little to soothe her nerves. They would watch her, scrutinizing her every move. The apprehensive glances exchanged among her peers stirred both dread and a flicker of resolve within her. When she caught Parker's cold stare from across the table, something shifted in her. No longer just a subject of his derision, she felt as though she transformed into an agent of change. This was her chance to redefine the narrative and, in doing so, her own identity. "Let's get started," Parker announced, threading his fingers together as he leaned back in his chair, exuding an aura of authority. Emily inhaled deeply, forcing her anxiety into the pit of her stomach. She began her presentation, each word delivered with a clarity she didn't know she possessed. Describing her findings, she infused passion into her arguments while adhering to a firm business framework. She navigated through trends, weaving in customer anecdotes and emotional responses alongside cold, hard data. Parker interjected often, his questions sharp and probing. At moments, he sought to undermine her efforts, but Emily found herself rising to the challenge with unexpected fervor. What defines our bottom line is evolving, she asserted, each response emboldened by her willingness to push back. Connecting on an emotional level isn't a cost, it's a long-term investment in loyalty. Just when she felt she might crack under the pressure, Emily remembered the students she had mentored during her internship. She'd seen them thrive when given space to express their ideas freely, a compassionate catalyst to their development. Now here she was, standing at that very precipice, and so she would do the same for herself. The board members shifted, their eyes now flitting back and forth as if engaged in an unseen discourse. She saw a few nodding, their skepticism wavering. The more she presented, the more she felt like a conductor, orchestrating not just numbers and trends, but a fundamental change in perspective. Can you guarantee these emotional insights translate to measurable outcomes? Parker asked, and it was a moment that called for clarity. By using A/B testing in key campaigns, we will establish a direct correlation, she replied, voice steady as her heart raced with surging adrenaline. But the essence of this strategy lies not in mere numbers, it's in the profound connections we foster with our audience. Something within her clicked, a dawning realization that this was not only about defending her position or impressing critics. It was about asserting her vision and claiming a seat at the decision-making table. As the meeting drew to a close, Emily felt an unfamiliar exhilaration. The tension that once felt suffocating transformed into an empowering buoyancy. Parker, though still skeptical, seemed to regard her with a newfound respect. After the meeting, whispers of her boldness spread amongst colleagues, igniting a spark of confidence that she hadn't felt in a long time. But just as she began to bask in the glow of her achievement, the door to the conference room swung open, revealing the board chair, an unexpected ally who resembled a storm front. She needed to prepare, Parker's potential retaliation loomed ominously. As Emily stepped out to confront yet another challenge, a haunting thought crossed her mind. Had firing the first salvo against Parker truly positioned her well? Or did it merely set her up as another target in his relentless pursuit? The next moment would reveal whether she had indeed shifted the workplace dynamics, but one thing was sure, the battle was just beginning. Emerging from the conference room, Emily felt an electrifying blend of anxiety and determined resolve coursing through her veins. The unexpected presence of the board chair turned her triumph into an uneasy anticipation. As she crossed the threshold, she steeled herself for whatever came next. The electric buzz of the office was still echoing from the meeting, an undercurrent of chatter reverberating off the walls. Emily, the board chair said, stopping her in her tracks. She forced herself to meet his gaze, which held a mix of appreciation and urgency. I'd like to discuss your proposal further. You made some compelling points. As they walked together toward his office, she felt an internal shift. Each step felt like a commitment to her newfound identity. She was no longer a timid voice among the chorus of familiar opinions, she was a contributor shaping the company's direction. Your presentation was passionate and insightful, he continued, gesturing for her to take a seat. But I need to know how far you're willing to go to push these ideas into action. Will you stand by them, even when the pushback comes? Particularly from Parker. The question hung in the air, and Emily hesitated. If the data supports my ideas, I believe we have a responsibility to pursue them. Change isn't comfortable, but it's necessary. He leaned back, considering her response. Good. We need people like you who aren't afraid to voice an opinion. But be prepared, Parker doesn't easily let go of his perspective. Your next move is crucial. Every muscle in Emily's body tensed as she realized the gravity of the situation. Striking a balance between optimism and defending her ideas would be more challenging than anticipated. Still, doubt began to unfurl slowly, cautious yet persistent. She had fought hard for her voice. Did she have the conviction to protect it against the likes of Parker? Back at her desk, Emily began brainstorming a plan. She penned a list of potential allies, considering their interests and connections, when an idea struck her. What if she gathered additional data from customer feedback to reinforce her proposal? It wasn't just about her voice being heard, it was about creating a coalition of ideas that could challenge Parker's entrenched perspective. As she delved deeper into her research, the hours melted away. The potential ramifications of the project stretched like a vast spiderweb before her. Each connection she made seemed to create another route for resilience. If she could present not just her viewpoints but the voices of consumers, she might finally shift the company's narrative. Days passed, filled with brainstorming sessions and plotting her approach to the next meeting. Sometimes, shadows of self-doubt flickered across her mind, questioning her resolve. Would she have enough strength to stand firm, or would she succumb when pressures mounted? When the time came to present her expanded findings, she took a deep breath, readying herself to transform potential vulnerability into an assertive stance. As she prepared herself, she noticed Parker's lingering glares more often. He wasn't just watching, he was studying her, waiting for a sign of weakness. The conference room once again buzzed with energy. Emily found herself at the front, layout more organized than before, showing data and evidence to bolster her argument. As she spoke, her confidence surged, the tension of the moment igniting a fire within her. Yet, just as she felt on the verge of captivating her audience, Parker interrupted with a combative question designed to throw her off balance. Do you really think these new insights would hold water in the real world? Emotional engagement is far too subjective. How do you intend to convince stakeholders of its value? It was a direct challenge, the type that could unravel a lesser prepared individual. But Emily had anticipated fragility, she had crafted her narrative to counter such tactics. That's precisely why I aim to gather real, qualitative responses directly from our consumers. Their voices don't just indicate feelings, they spotlight long-term loyalty outcomes that our metrics alone can't capture. This isn't merely about emotion, it's about understanding our market. Once again, she felt that connection deepen within her. It was more than data now, it was the embodiment of her journey and a commitment to staying true to those she represented. The moment lingered in place like a held breath, Parker's expression tightened, and she suddenly sensed he was recalibrating. The balance of power felt temporarily teetering in her favor. Let us explore that further, he eventually said, albeit begrudgingly. Just when Emily thought she might sail to victory, a distant notification pinged on her phone, an alert from the company server. She dared a glance, her heart dropping when she saw the headline, "Board to discuss a potential leadership restructure." Her palms went cold. Was there a potential upheaval heading straight for her? Could Parker leverage this news against her? As the meeting wrapped up, the thrill of the debate faded, replaced by a rush of uncertainty. Emily's conviction was still fierce, but a new challenge loomed ominously. Was she prepared to navigate not just her professional battles but also the shifting tides of leadership that could easily overturn the ground she fought to claim? She had faced Parker, but it seemed there were deeper currents she had yet to confront. The storm was gathering, and amidst it, Emily sensed that her true fight for resilience was only just beginning. The sun beamed down on Emily as she stepped out of the office building, the warmth a stark contrast to the chill of uncertainty that lingered in her mind. Despite the successful defense against Parker's challenges, the impending restructuring news cast a long shadow over her budding confidence. Yet, with each step away from the corporate veil, Emily felt a new sense of power surge within her. She had outmaneuvered Parker, held her ground in the face of opposition, and affirmed her vision for the company's marketing strategy. These were tangible victories that etched themselves into the bedrock of her professional identity. With a newfound conviction, Emily made her way to her favorite cafe, a favorite retreat where she could gather her thoughts. As she sipped her coffee, the bustling sounds of the cafe surrounded her, a comforting reminder of life beyond corporate politics. Here, she was just Emily, young, ambitious, hungry for growth, and determined to carve out her path. Looking out from her window seat, she reflected on her journey. The timid intern who once shrank in the presence of authoritative figures had evolved into a confident voice willing to challenge established norms. Today, she wasn't merely an employee, she had become a thought leader advocating for authenticity and marketing a quality she could weave her family's values into without apology. The cafe door swung open, and her mentor, Richard, walked in. With an encouraging smile, he approached her table, sensing the energy radiating from Emily. "I've been hearing great things about you. It appears Parker is finally backing off. Your insights are starting to reshape discussions at higher levels," he said, sitting across from her. The compliment felt particularly validating, grounding her journey in the reality of professional acknowledgement. "Thank you, Richard. But the restructuring news, it has me on edge. I fear it could derail everything," she confessed, the flicker of doubt creeping back in. He leaned forward, a spark of enthusiasm flickering in his eyes. "Change can be daunting, but remember, with restructuring comes the opportunity for fresh ideas. You've already established yourself as a critical thinker, leverage that. This might be your moment to step into an even bigger role." His words resonated, igniting a sense of urgency within her. What if she took the lead in presenting a comprehensive strategy for the transition? Instead of sitting back in fear, she could become an essential part of the conversation. It was time to gather her research, compile her proposals, and position herself firmly amid the changes. With a fierce determination, Emily spent the next few days immersed in preparations. She reached out to colleagues who shared her vision, building alliances to bolster her proposal. Together, they drafted a presentation that highlighted the benefits of emotional engagement while tying it into the data that appealed to the board's analytical mindset. As the new meeting approached, Emily felt the adrenaline surging through her. Each step felt like a commitment to not just defend her ideas, but to lead the charge toward an innovative future. The inevitable confrontation loomed with Parker, but she had transformed her fear into fuel for ambition. When she finally stood inside the conference room again, the atmosphere vibrated with anticipation. The executives filed in, each taking their seats, with the tension palpable but invigorating. As the meeting commenced, she presented her carefully crafted strategy, her confidence unwavering. She discussed the emotional resonance of their brand voice, aligning it with authentic consumer experiences while clearly presenting the expected outcomes backed by data. As she spoke, her eyes found Parker's, who sat in silence, arms crossed, but she held her ground. "This is an opportunity for growth, not just financially but in fostering genuine connections. If we want to remain leaders, we have to evolve into a brand that understands its audience on an emotional level," she emphasized. When Parker finally interjected, his tone was different, an acknowledgement of her growth rather than a dismissal. "Emily, it seems you're quite serious about this shift. But how can we ensure it doesn't become just another passing trend? I believe the key is engaging with our customers continuously, not just during this campaign," she replied, her voice steady. "We need to establish a feedback loop that drives our strategies and gives our consumers a voice in our evolution." With each argument, her clarity and strength radiated, transforming the room's atmosphere. She wasn't merely presenting ideas, she was commanding respect and validating her place within the narrative of the company's future. At the end of the meeting, applause erupted, and for a moment, the room felt like it was buoyed by collective inspiration. Richard's beaming smile reinforced her accomplishment. As the meeting concluded, it was clear, Emily had not only established her proposals but had also asserted her evolution into a confident, influential force within the company. Parker approached her with a reluctant nod, a shift in their dynamic visible for the first time. "Well done, Emily. We'll need you on the next stages of this transition." The validation settled warmly within her. Here she stood, transformed from the shy intern into a recognized voice who had not only conquered her own insecurities but had also introduced an essential shift within her company. Stepping out into the vibrant sunlight, Emily felt a sense of accomplishment washing over her. She had not just survived a series of challenges, she had thrived in them. The weight of the past was shed, the path before her stretched wide and full of potential. This was it. She had arrived, and with her voice firmly cemented in the company's direction, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. Now is the time to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel not to miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could be just as transformative. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these stories thriving. It truly makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's journey and her future. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second, only true fans of personal overcoming stories know the importance of this message.